Hi, my name is Sarah and I'm a tailor here at Levi's. Today I'm going to show you how to create an owl costume out of unwanted denim. So supplies needed for this are pins, some fabric weights. If you don't have fabric weights, something to act as a fabric weight, a pencil and ruler, and a fabric marker or just a regular marker is fine, some scissors and elastic, some orange craft paper and cardstock or an old cereal box, a stapler and craft glue, fabric glue if you have. You'll also need an old t-shirt that fits loosely on your child, and you'll also need a sewing machine. If not, you could try using a glue gun. And last but not least, you'll need about 3 to 4 pairs of jeans. For my feather pattern, I am going to draw 2 T's on a piece of paper. And on 1/2 of the longest vertical line, you are going to draw half of the shape of your feather. And you can just eyeball this out. I made mine about 2 inches wide on the very top, on the widest point, which will make my feather 4 inches in total across. And then for my smaller feather, I made it about 1.5 inches, which would make it 3 inches across and about 4 inches long. And again, this is totally up to you what shape of feather that you want. I would recommend rounding it out than making them super pointy, because when you lay them on, you will need more feathers to cover the gaps. So once you finish tracing out your feather pattern on the half, you are going to fold on that long vertical line, and I've cut the horizontal line with an extra 1/4 inch seam allowance. I want it to be just a little bit longer. Then you're going to cut along your curve line, and that will be the shape of your feather. Once you unfold it, if you don't like the shape of it, you can always reshape that piece or follow these steps again and trace it out again. After doing this, I would recommend to make your patterns on a cardstock or a thicker paper. I found that tracing it out a bunch of times onto my denim, it wasn't holding its shape as well. I've cut a pair of jeans along the inseam, the front and back, so they could lie down flat. You could even simply just cut the legs off the jeans. If you wanted to turn a pair of jeans into shorts, this is a great way to utilize the rest of the jean. So what I'm going to do now is trace out my feather pattern pieces. And in no particular order, I just traced out my large pattern pieces and my small pattern pieces to get as many feathers as I could. And so you'll have 2 large pieces of a front and back leg attached and a front and back leg attached. And you'll want to sandwich those together with the right sides facing together. And that, I found that was the best way to get most of my pattern pieces out. And with right sides lying together, you can trace your pattern pieces on and cut 2 at a time. For my wing pattern, I had laid down my daughter's shirt, and I traced out onto a big piece of paper. You can use newspaper or whatever kind of paper you have if you need to tape some together to get the size. And I measured her wingspan from the center of her back out to her wrist. And so that is that longest point here that's curving. It's kind of slightly off a 90-degree angle. I wanted to give it a little bit more slack, so if she raises her arms quite high, then she'd be able to have that room. And then I made it go down the center back, but a little bit off center, just to give it a little bit of a gap there to have her costume show through. So now we're going to cut out our wing pattern, and you're going to want a pair of jeans for this. My daughter's 5, and I found that just a pair of large jeans was enough to cut out 2 wings. So you will cut up the inseam and the center front, center back, lay these sides together. I like to cut away any bulk that might be in the way, like pocket, or if there's any tabs. And depending on the size of the wing for your child, again, you might need to piece together some more fabric, but you will find this out once you have your pattern and cut your jeans open. And what I did is just lie my pattern down and saw the best way that it would fit. And once I found the best fit for my pattern piece, I just laid my patterned weights on top and cut it out. And if you don't have pattern weights, you can use cell phones, bottles of water, like a staple or anything to kind of weigh it down, or you could also use pins. So once you've cut your wing out, what you want to do is bring it to your sewing machine and turn under all the edges. I found having a nice finish around the edges of the wing, it looked really nice and polished. This you can just fold at your sewing machine, or you can prepare it by pressing it 2 times. I did a 1/4 inch and a 1/4 inch and bring it to your iron just to kind of hold it in place. If you don't have a sewing machine, you could always use hem tape or glue, or you could also use some type of trim. Either way, I found finishing the edges of this looks really nice and polished. And once you're done, you're going to want to bring it to your iron and press around all those edges. Some of the edges of your wing are going to be cut off grain, and so they might pull while you're sewing, so you have to be very careful of that. Inevitably, they will ripple a little bit, so the iron really helps in smoothing all those ripples out. Now we are going to apply our feathers onto our shirt. And what you're going to want to do is start at the very bottom of the shirt. This is the easiest way, and you want to kind of layer it all the way up the shirt as you go. And I've just worked out a little pattern of how I wanted to apply my feathers, alternating dark, medium, and light. And again, this is totally up to you. You could have less light in there and just kind of have it speckled through the costume. It's totally up to you. Once you have this all pinned, you're going to want to bring this to your sewing machine. And the alternate option is to glue these down. And again, that might not hold as long, but it is an option. And I will note that these feathers all have a frayed edge. It's a raw edge. So if you put this through the wash machine, it will fray up quite a bit. So if you do want to wash this costume, I would wash it in cold water and hang to dry. Once you've sewn or glued on your first row of feathers from front all the way to the back, you're going to want to add your second layer. And these you'll kind of want to cascade them in such a way that they cover the stitching and they also cover the gap and the fabric. And this is totally up to you how high and how low you want to have the feathers. The smaller distance between the top edges of the feathers, the more bushier and the more full the feathers will be. So this is totally up to you and what distance you want to use, but you do want to make sure that it's enough of a distance that you will cover your fabric and the stitching of the layers underneath. Once you've sewn enough layers to hit about the waist point of the shirt, you're going to want to slowly transition into the small feathers now. For my daughter, this shirt is about a 5'6", and it took me about 5 layers to get to that waist point. And what you're going to want to do is apply the feathers, and you may have to trim away at the armhole. You don't want a whole lot of bulk there because it'll be quite uncomfortable for your child. Once you have filled the front and back mostly with your small feathers, you're going to want to move onto the sleeve portion. And around the top of the armhole, I've left that blank because I'm going to apply the sleeves on first and then kind of fill it all in together. So in order to do this, I use 2 large feathers and put them along the sleeve. Again, this depends on the type of shirt you're using. If you're using a matching colored shirt, you may not have to cover the sleeves. But here I wanted to just make sure that I was covering all the pink, and I've left a bit of excess around the neckline so that I could tuck that under and then top stitch. So once you've stitched your shoulders on and covered the sleeves, you can go and begin to fill the rest of the gaps. I did this with small feathers, and I did use a couple large ones just to kind of fill it in a bit more, and it depends on the cut of your shirt and the color of your shirt, but you just want to kind of fill any gaps and kind of maintaining that design that you started with on the bottom layers. So for your owl mask, you are going to want to take either a piece of scrap fabric or some thin paper and hold it up to your child and just make a mark of where their nose and eyes are. Once you have a good shape, you're going to trace it onto your cardstock and cut it out. And I used my lighter denim as the base of my owl face. And then what I had done is cut out 2 little circles, larger ones to go around the eyes and then a smaller one to go on top of the larger one. I'm going to glue this all and then cut out the hole again. You are going to want to use a really good glue for this and let it dry overnight. I would recommend putting some craft paper on top and then a heavy book to just make sure it all sets well. You're going to want to add your elastic. I cut the size that I thought would fit my child. I kind of pre-measured it all. Once you attach one side, I would go and double check and make sure that the mask is tight enough to fit them. And I just used a simple stapler to hold this in place. For my cape, I wanted to add a few feathers onto it. So with the remaining large pieces I had, I attached them all around the edge. And then I also attached a few small ones in between. I've laid them out and I like how it looks, so I am going to pin it and sew it in place. Again, you can use glue if you do not have a sewing machine. Once you've completed adding the feathers to your wings, you are going to want to add a little wristband. And what I've done is just cut along the edge of the waistband. I've cut it about 6 inches long. And then you can measure your child's wrist. You want it to be able to slip over their fist, so you don't want it too tight. You don't want it too loose so it slips off. But once you have the right size, you're going to want to stitch this in place. Again, if you do not have a sewing machine, I don't know if glue would hold this in place, so I would hand sew it. Once you've completed both of your wings along with the wristband, you're going to want to attach it to your garment. So with the right side facing down, with the front of the garment facing down, you're going to want to place your wings and have it crisscross just at the center top back of the neckline. Once you have it in place, you are going to want to secure this in place. I did sew quite a decently sized square around it because I found that just tacking it wasn't enough. So I would make sure that this holds quite well because your child will be pulling on it. Well, that's a wrap. I hope you guys had a lot of fun making your costume. I know I did. My daughter loves it. I'm sure your child will too. What a great way to be sustainable, to use supplies around the house and not spend a lot of money this year. Thank you for watching this video. I would love to see your creation of your owl costume in the comments below. And until next time, have a great day.